Kia ora, Helen Brahms here, coming to you live from Menifee in California. Hope you're all having a super fantastic sparkling start to your Friday. I was going to do Fun Friday today, but because of the date, it's a little hard to have fun when you're thinking back to what happened 19 years ago today. And sorry, jeepers, what's going on with my hair lately? Leaves things everywhere. And so I thought, rather than giving you fun activities to do today, you can go find your own fun today, but I want you to make sure that you take a moment to stop and pause and remember all of those who lost their lives 19 years ago today. That was one of those pivotal moments in history where everything changed for us. The lives that we knew completely changed. In fact, when you think about all this COVID thing too, we've got another pivotal moment and everything's changing again. So these major changes do come along and happen. But 19 years ago today, where was I? We were living in Northern Virginia, and I was working at the Residence Inn in Fairfax, Merrifield at the time. I was a front desk supervisor, and my night auditor was out on vacation, so I was actually working the night shift that week, so he could have his vacation. And so I'd come home that morning. I had met Brad because he was getting ready to go to work. So we had our time together that we normally had in the mornings when I finished a night shift and he was heading off to work. Then he headed off to work, I went to bed, and normally I only get to sleep like about 3-4 hours in the morning, even though we had put in blackout curtains in the bedroom and everything, because I am terrible at sleeping during the day. I am not a night shift person. I am a morning person. And so I'd actually gone to bed probably around 8 o'clock because I finished work at 7. So by the time I got home and said goodbye to Brad and that, it was probably around 8 to 8:30 by the time I got to bed. Around 11, I woke up and I was like, oh my gosh, we have documents we have to sign. We have to get them back today because they've got to be back by, I think it was the next day or the day after. And so I suddenly thought, oh, I'll give Brad a call. I can go and I'll leave a little earlier and I'll go via FedEx, drop the stuff off, and then continue on to work because Brad had to sign the documents. And so I went downstairs and went downstairs. We had mobiles. Yeah, we had cell phones in those days. That's right, because I had this number. Trying to remember things. Some things are a little grey. Other things are very crystal clear. So I went downstairs and gave him a call and called him at work. And he says, well, haven't you heard what happened? I says, what do you mean what happened? I says, I just woke up. I said, we've got to get this stuff signed and off to FedEx. And I wanted to know what time you're going to be home. He goes, so you haven't heard anything of what's happened? I said, no. I said, what happened? Thinking, what the heck's going on here? And he turned around and he said, the Twin Towers are no more. And I said, as in those 2 towers in New York? He goes, yeah. I go, what do you mean they're no more? Because, they're tall buildings. What do you mean they're gone? He said, 2 planes crashed into them. I'm like, excuse me? I honestly thought he was joking with me. I'm still half asleep at this time. I've been working a night shift, and I'm surviving on less than 2 hours of sleep at this point. Just a couple hours of sleep, and I'm like still foggy brained and everything else. And I'm like, what? And he says, turn the TV on. So I turn the TV on, and all I'm seeing is all this devastation and everything else. And I honestly thought I was watching a movie. The problem, and then I'm like flicking through the channels. The problem was that same movie was on every channel I was clicking to. And I was just like, what the hell happened? And he said, and so he told me about the terrorists flying 2 planes into the buildings. He even told me that, and he said, we just heard that, and when he got to work, and he worked at the time at the Naval Research Lab, they had actually dropped they had closed down the network, closed down everything at the thing. They were holding everybody on base. But they were broadcasting through their computer monitors the CNN news channel so they could see what was going on. They'd heard about the plane going down in Pennsylvania had just happened. He was actually driving around the Beltway to work when he saw the smoke go up from the plane colliding with the Pentagon. And I was just like, what the hell? And so he's telling me everything that's going on. I'm watching it. Up until that point, I very rarely watched the news. I had learned long ago not to trust a lot of news channels and stuff. That's a whole nother story. But I very rarely sat down and watched news. I didn't get very much sleep that day. My eyes were just glued to that TV. I could not believe what I was seeing. It took me so long it took me ages to get through to work. to get through the hotel that I worked. And our hotel was right next door to the head office for American Red Cross. I eventually got through to work. It took me over an hour to get through, and said to them, says, look, I've just woken up, I've just learned what's happened. Do you guys need me to come in early? Because I wasn't scheduled to go until 11 o'clock that night. They said, yeah, can you be here by, I think it was like 7 o'clock they wanted me in. They said, Marriott's done I can't remember the term for it, but it's almost like a blackout where nobody can book any rooms whatsoever, even if you had the very special card. And the higher ups in the Marriott Rewards program had this very special card that even if a hotel was sold out, you had to give them a room if they showed up. Otherwise, it was dollars out of the hotel pockets and everything else that you had to compensate them for. But even that card didn't work that day. They did a complete blackout, and it's very, very rarely is that done. And it was in the whole DC metro area, Northern Virginia area. Our hotel was on the blackout. They had and we'd had a bunch of people were checking out that day, and we were supposed to have a whole lot more coming in that day. Well, all those people that were checking out had gone to the airport to fly home. So, of course, now they're calling around trying to find a hotel to get into because now they're stranded at the airport. They can't fly. And the hotel surroundings, they wanted their rooms back and was like, we can't. So our rooms were actually blocked out for the American Red Cross people that were coming in because, like I said, the head office was right next door. I don't know if it still is, but it was at the time. And so they said, yeah, can you come in? I think I ended up doing like a 12-hour shift that night. I went in at 7 o'clock that night and didn't go home till 7 o'clock the next morning. But went in that evening. The phones were ringing off the hook. And in the residence, and you had the front desk here, and then over here you had the gatehouse, which was sort of like the communal area. It was the dining area where we had breakfast in the mornings. Monday through Thursday we did the evening socials in there. There was a TV in there, and from the front desk you could very easily see the TV. That TV was on CNN, and I had done night shift a lot in the Residence Inn, and I knew that most nights by around 11 o'clock, there was nothing happened after 11 o'clock at night. When you came in to do the 11 o'clock shift, you did the changeover with the person, they left, and it was just quiet from there on. You very rarely got people coming in after hours or coming down the front desk. The phone very rarely rang, and there was just you and the security guard on at night there, and you had the procedures that you had to run at certain times and all that sort of stuff. That was the busiest night audit shift I have ever done. People were constantly coming down. I think it was the fact they just wanted that other contact with other humans at the time. That TV was just continually on CNN, and it was just running 24/7 with news. People were coming down in the middle of the night. I mean, there was never that gatehouse area was never empty the entire evening, and people were coming in. The phone was still ringing that night. People wanting rooms and everything. I was trying to get night audit processes run. It was the busiest night I have ever had, and it was just interesting to see people's reactions to what was going on, because there were those hotel guests that hadn't checked out that were still in the hotel. Then we had others still arriving because they were the American Red Cross people coming in, and American Red Cross provided us the names of people coming in. And so we had rooms for them, so we were busy checking those people in. They're coming in at all hours of the night because they had to drive in from wherever they were coming from. So they said, just go to this hotel, there's a room there for you, blah, 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 blah. So we were having to check people in at all hours of the night, which we have never done before. I don't think I'd ever been so busy at a night shift. I've been that busy during a day shift, but this was nighttime. By the time I got home that next morning, I was exhausted. I was running on empty. I hadn't slept much the day before. I think I got an hour nap in that afternoon before I had to go in. I just finished a 12-hour shift, which was the busiest night audit shift I'd ever done, running on empty. In fact, that day, because I always stop at the supermarket, I'd always stopped at the supermarket on my way in to work to pick up something for dinner during my shift, and some protein snacks and that sort of stuff that would keep me awake that wasn't sugar. And so I had done that, and they had a book stand there, and I picked up this book, and it was a Vince Flynn novel. It was about Mitch Rapp, and it was, I think, the second one in the series, but it was about terrorists taking over the White House. And of course, everything had just happened that day, and I like pick up this book and I read the back and go, this sounds really cool. And so I take that with me. I did not get to start that book that day, but I did start it the next night. It was an awesome book. But it was just the timing of everything that was going on. Me picking up this book and starting to read it. And because there were times during the shift where you did have some downtime. And I know some of our night orders we had were students, and they used to study during that time. They'd get all their stuff done, and then there was that lull in the workflow process where everything would be completed, and you'd have like a couple of hours that you could, you sit there and do your schoolwork or whatever. As long as everything got done, and they answered the phones if they rang and all that, we didn't care if they sat there and did their schoolwork. As long as everything got done when it was supposed to get done. But yeah, I remember reading that book. I wish I could remember the name of it. But it was, I know if I saw the title, I would remember it. But that night was just, it was, that impact. I hadn't watched that much news continuously in years. It put me into a different frame of mind. I was having therapy at the time for other issues. And I had my therapy session that Friday, and she says, how much news have you been watching over the last few days? And I said, basically every time I'm awake, she says, right, 10 minutes a day, that's it. That's all you're allowed, because she could see how what had happened there was affecting me with my treatments and stuff for the therapy sessions I was under at the time. And so I was like, okay, so then I went down to 10 minutes a day, and at night, when I was working the night shift, when I was still working the night shift, except I was doing Monday through Friday, so I'd finished that night shift, that thing. But if I had to do the night shift again, then, which I had to do a couple of times, I would flip the channel to something different other than news. And even during the day, if we had the TV on, I was on the front desk, because I got to make those decisions, I would flip it to something different, some other generic channel, like Home and Garden or anything that was not news, just to help limit that time that I was absorbing the news, because it was having such an impact on me and such an effect on my mental stability and everything. Well, not stability, but my mental thinking process. I wasn't at my super fantastic and sparkling at that time, because this was before Brad's cancer thing started. I still had my positive outlook on everything, but I hadn't earned my super fantastic sparkling stripes. But yeah, so that was that day, and that's my story. Where I remember where I was and what happened, and I always remember Brad telling me that he didn't get home till like 2:00 that afternoon. Was when they were fine. He got home at 2:00 or left at 2:00. No, they left at 2:00. They finally opened the base to let everybody leave at 2:00 and head home. And so, but they had to wait for the freeway, because everything going out of DC was blocked. Like the traffic, they said the traffic was the worst they had ever seen it, because everybody was evacuating the city, trying to get out of the city. Emergency vehicles are trying to get over to the Pentagon. You've got officials running around trying to get together to do their security thingy-mabobs that they do, or their emergency processes and everything else. So traffic was horrendous. And so I think it was like around 2:00 in the afternoon where they finally allowed those from the base to start heading home. And it took Brad, it normally took him an hour to get home. It took him almost 2 hours to get home because of the traffic. He said he had never seen the traffic that bad before. Because normally when he's driving to and from work, he's going against the flow of traffic. He said it was like he was stuck in rush hour. And he's never had that issue before. So it impacted everything. But yeah, he was telling me that he was driving to work, and he happened to glance to his left, and he suddenly saw this plume of smoke go up. And when he got to work, he found out that the plane had hit the Pentagon at that point. So he was sort of like, oh my gosh, I saw the smoke for that. He saw that he didn't see the plane actually impact. He just saw the after effects with the smoke going up. But yeah, he said that was terrifying, about how close he was to it and all that sort of thing, because of where he worked and everything else. But he said they basically shut down everything at work, and they were just broadcasting CNN over the computer monitors over the entire network. Nobody was allowed to do any work that day, and they kept them at work until they were cleared to leave the base and head back to their homes and stuff. They only kept essential personnel at the base there. But that's my 9/11 story, and every time a 9/11 comes around, I always think of all those people who lost family members that day, friends, family, the first responders who lost their lives that day rescuing other people, the community that the nation that came together at that time to get through that. And basically we've got the whole nation got reborn at that time. People started realizing the value of a human life, and I think that kind of got forgotten, has kind of diminished over the years. And then COVID hit, and now we're remembering that, life is precious. You got to make the most of every day. You never know when your last day is going to be. None of those people knew when they got up that morning to go to work or to go to the fire station or the police station or whatever, wherever they were going to work that day in New York or at the Pentagon, or people getting on that people getting on those planes that were flying and stuff. They didn't know that that was going to be their last day. So hug somebody close to you. Give them some love, because you never know when they walk out that door if what you said to them will be the last words they ever heard from you. So always make sure they're words of love and encouragement. And thank you for listening to my story. What is your story? What do you remember about 9/11? Please put them in the comments below. Would love to hear other people's memories of those days, where they were, how they heard about it, how it affected them, that sort of thing too. So have a super fantastic sparkling day, and remember to take a moment just take a moment to remember all those lives that were lost, and just remember your loved ones that have passed since then. Just remember loved ones that have passed, whether it was that day or it was later on. Just remember those and be grateful for those that you have in your life. And I mentioned I really don't like September. Anyway, I'm out of here. I'm going to go get rid of these tears and just take a moment to compose myself again. But have a super fantastic sparkling day, and please put your stories, your memories of today in the comments below, because I would love to read those. Until later on this evening, he konera.